Hello, my name is Enzo,
Hi, I'm Isabel.
and we're in Hudson today. We're really excited to be interviewing Lianne Bridges, and it's a really nice fall day, isn't it?
It is. We were here about a month ago in the summer, and it's so gorgeous to be back here with the leaves changing colors, and can you hear the breeze? It's a
Yes.
beautiful day.
Nice and cool. So we'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit.
Hello, my name is Enzo,
Hi, I'm Isabel.
and we're here once again in Hudson. Today we're interviewing Lianne Bridges. Welcome, Lianne.
Thank you so much.
So I've known Lianne before. She was in the corporate world, and recently we reconnected again. We both have a holistic lifestyle, and she's here to tell us a lesson how she helps people. So a lot of therapists, practitioners really need business help, like the skills that you have. And could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. So I kind of work with two types of people at different ends of the spectrum. So whether it's health or holistic practitioners who really want to build their business, reach more people, have a greater impact, and gain more prosperity and revenue through that, or individuals who are doing work where they're making money and doing well but want to bring more consciousness into their leadership style. So I kind of get people from both ends. So a lot of your clients are more, or the people that you work with in your network are more the former, right? People who are already doing some great work, following their passion.
Or students sometimes, or people just starting off.
Yeah, exactly. Or the ones that I also work with, individuals who aren't quite sure whether they're young students or, further down in their career, they're thinking about retirement. I often talk about refirement, because the concept of retirement is really from the industrial age, and it's really about how we.
I just got that.
But it's the idea that we were supposed to learn for like a third of our life, and then earn for another third, and then we'll retire with this big nest egg, and then start to return to society is an old way of thinking. It's really that we're to do all of those three on an ongoing basis. So it's forever learning, right? And I think a lot of your practitioners would understand that. It's always earning. There's no reason why we have to stop earning at 65. It may be at a different capacity. And it's always about giving back. So whether you're 20, you're still finding a way to have a service aspect to the work that you do.
And you practice at home, so your office is in your home?
Yeah, so I do a lot of online outreach work with people from across North America, hopefully one day across the world as well. But my community was really based here in Montreal and Hudson, and it grew from there and kind of expanded out. But yeah, so a little bit like my journey started on this particular path when my husband died 8 years ago. And so I was left alone to look after two small children. So I was looking for a way to be able to be at home for them when they came home from school. Have that flexibility, that I wasn't traveling all the time, while still being able to do work that I love and that brought meaning to me as well, and earned income, because I was just, trying to manage a household and two kids alone. So that was really important to me, to be able to do all of those things.
Absolutely.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I imagine that was in itself, just putting that up together, starting a business, was something, a tool that life experience, invaluable life experience that you're able to pass on to, or you have a different kind of appreciation for your clients who are also, in this beginning phase of starting something up and feeling a strong urge or necessity to get it up and running.
Yeah, exactly. And that idea, like I had when I met Enzo before, as another name too, we're changing names today, I worked as a consultant, a business consultant, so I had the chance to start my own business at that point. And then when my husband died, and I mentioned what I wanted to do, my different objectives, it was starting fresh. It was also a point in my life where I was going through a major spiritual awakening. I think when you lose someone really close to you, and you realize how precious time is, that you don't want to waste any, doing things you don't love, being with people you don't really resonate with, but conversely wanting to be. So for me, it was trying to figure out what that path was, and in trying to figure it out for myself, I realized that I developed a process to help others to figure out what their real purpose is and stepping into it. Sorry.
I was it reminded me of something. I sort of, when my parents died, I went through a little bit of that. It was more, for me, it was more like, who am I? I'm no longer the son of these two people. So I was rediscovering myself.
Yeah.
Was that sort of something similar?
Same kind of idea. Also, because I had such a strong love connection to my husband, I wanted to understand where he was. So I wanted to, I didn't believe he died. I could still feel it in my heart. I could feel him in my heart. And I wanted to understand where that was, that he was. So that's where I went on, I had always been spiritual and scientific. I'm very curious, and but I wanted to understand a little bit more about the metaphysical world and what's beyond this world. So I went across the world. I went back to Bali with my kids. I thought maybe I'd do the Eat, Pray, Love, with kids type of thing. But I decided not to stay there, to come back to my community. That was really important to me. But I also did, I went to a lot of conferences. I went to the Omega Institute. I went to Wisdom Conference. And what's really cool is that in that process, by learning and overcoming a lot of difficult things in trying to figure out what my real path is, what my dharma, destiny is that I learned a lot that I can now bring back to people to help them, so they're not wasting time going down all these dead-end paths, kind of the same way that I did. And what's really fun is that now I'm kind of going back to these places. Like last winter, I was at the Wisdom Conference presenting.
Yes,
I'm going to be going to the Omega Institute to present. So these places that gave me a lot at the time that I really needed it, it's my opportunity to go back to them and give back as well. So it's awesome.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
That you're getting back from places you received.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Joseph Campbell, but he wrote The Hero's Journey, and that's the whole idea that all of us are on a hero's journey. That's part of our life, and we go through, these difficult times and overcome them. But the last part is it coming back to our community. That's the important part, and imparting that knowledge. And as we get older, again, kind of the new idea of not retirement versus more refinement is that people of a certain age have amassed a lot of personal and professional experience, and it's about giving back. And Native societies really honored and cherished the elders, and our society over the last few generations hasn't. It's like you go off to the golf course, you don't bring back, but it's really a responsibility for us to bring that wisdom back and serve, so that's what I'm very passionate about.
I find the older I get, the more fun I'm having.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't feel like I have to retire, but I just have to find new passions,
That's it. And why would you want to if you're doing what you love?
Right.
And you're doing it in a flexible way where you're not kind of like under somebody else's thumb or agenda, then why wouldn't you work as long as you could? Right?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. I think that you're right in when you were saying earlier that this notion of retirement is outdated, and it came from a time when you would just go to work because that was the only way to make money and support the family, and you just suck it up we wait till that 65
if you make it.
And if you make for sure. Whereas now I think that there's more of a permission and there's more of a culture of doing things that we love and growing through the work that we do, and not just doing it out of necessity or I have to do this. But
well, it's really cool because there's two major trends that are causing that to happen. So there's the baby boomers who started retiring about 10 years ago, and they were like, they lost a lot of their money in the investment crash, the financial crash, and so they're rethinking things. And there's a lot of research is showing if you continue to work, you live longer, you're healthier, but again, doing work that you love. But there's also the millennials who are coming in saying, I'm not going to do what my parents did, like work for years, not enjoy it, and then retire. And then they've seen a lot of people, they retire and 2 years later they die because their energy is just like, well, why am I here? What am I doing? Right. So there's that kind of both sides. There's the baby boom and the millennials who are really making the change that's happening right now. We're seeing in terms of the work and following more of a passion and purpose.
So speaking of change, I was on your website, and on your website you talk about you work with change leaders, and I thought, I don't know if this is still, if people still don't look at themselves as leaders or people, but I still feel that there are a lot of people who shy away from the term change leader, and they think, well, who am I? You know, I'm not out there, doing major fundraising campaigns, or, making, having these huge lectures, or reaching out to tons of people. So, maybe they don't really identify themselves as change leaders. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us more about what does this mean? Who are these change leaders that you're working with?
Well, I'm really glad you asked me that, because I do hear that from people, and sometimes I go, I should be changing. But Paul Hawken, who wrote Blessed Unrest, I think about 5 to 10 years ago, he talked about the biggest movement in history is happening right now, and it's from the grassroots up. It's the individual practitioners who are looking at doing things differently, who are maybe starting a business, starting a community, starting a neighborhood watch, whatever it might be. And he actually looked at this trend and tried to count the number of these grassroots, for-profit, not-for-profit, but more for that mixture of for-profit and not, and found there's millions of them. And they're the ones that are making the real change in the world. So it's that kind of idea that starting with ourselves, when we start to transform, when we awaken, when we start to follow our passion, our purpose, that we start to transform lives. It's starting with our own life, and then it goes to our loved ones, and then our family, and so forth. So it's interesting, because a lot of people don't feel that way, that they are leaders, because we've had a traditional concept of what a leader is. But I feel that if you feel desire to make a difference, feel even the desire first to do something that you love, you're not sure whether you want to make a difference or not, usually the next thing will happen once you start to follow your passion. You start to realize, I want to do something that makes an impact too. So definitely all like practitioners, healers that are doing things in a different way, transforming the way we see medicine, the way we see education, the way we see corporate. All of those people are change leaders. And of course there are the traditional leaders too, that are in organizations and leading movements as well. But what I'm talking about with them is the ones who are really conscious. They're using more the modern ideas of being self-aware, using compassion, really understanding the human spirit and how important that is in the work that they do.
Very exciting to think that business people can think that way, and where we could go. That's just wow.
Well, that's it. And we were both in the corporate world, and kind of like at some point kind of shied away from it, because it became, I don't know about you, Enzo, but for me it became such a dog-eat-dog world. And it really did lack the kind of soul and the consciousness. And it was going to like conference like the Wisdom Conference out in San Francisco like almost 10 years ago, seeing business people coming together with spiritual leaders and mindfulness, and seeing what was possible when you did that. And how not only is it wonderful for the people who are working, but it's great for the organization, because their performance goes up, innovation goes up, engagement goes up. And it all starts with them understanding the organization, what is their why, and then the individuals too, helping them understand what is their purpose. And when you connect employees to purpose, then you're also then going to start to connect your customers to the purpose as well. And an organization like Apple really understood that. That's why they've done so well, because their why was, we want to make a dent in the universe. We're going to do things differently. They didn't focus on, we sell iPods or phones. They focused on what they want to do and how they want to do it differently.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and so their how was make it more user-friendly, make things simple, make it beautiful. That's how they filled their why of being more revolutionary, making a dent in the universe. The product of it was those products, but that's not where you really to focus. And that's really what I would tell any client as well, is start with your why and understand what that is. Not your end product, that I've got this workshop that I'm doing, or this modality that I'm doing. Because it helps you understand how you're different and what you are uniquely bringing to the world.
Do you have an example of a client you had that went from ordinary to like superhero?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of different and superheroes are defined in different ways.
Rock star maybe.
Yeah.
Well, listen, sometimes I feel like a superstar when I make dinner. So you're
Exactly,
right.
yeah.
It's all relative, and you have to define it.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing because there really are so many different stories, and each one represents a different type of person that might be listening.
True.
You know, so one person that represents a lot of people that I come across is somebody who came to me who had a lot of different passions and didn't know how to put it all together.
Oh, okay.
So that's one example. And one of her passion and what she was trained in was graphic design and web development. But she was really passionate about horses and holistic horse health and care.
Wow, what a mix.
And so, yeah, that was one of, those are two of many, many things she'd done. She was an Olympic snowboarder, like she
Wow.
was unbelievable, of course. But she couldn't shoot, so we kind of call those people multi-passionistas, people who are generalists, who love different things. They're usually starters, but they get down on themselves because they start things and then they don't, kind of necessarily figure out how it's all integrated or how to move forward. And often they get stuck in what their training was. So her training was web development, like her business or career training. She thought that's what she should be doing. But what we started to do was understand what she's really passionate about, what brings meaning to her, and what she's uniquely designed, what her gifts are, what her expertise is, what her personal journey is, what her archetype, is. That helped to understand that really what her work is, it's much more about holistic horse health, and that she would use her graphic design not for other people, but for her own work.
Right.
And so she developed her own website and marketing materials and so forth, and now started to realize that she's very unique in the world. There's nobody online doing this kind of work. So she's developing online programs to help people understand that the health of a horse starts with their hoofs, and metal hooves are outdated, and it's more about actually getting them towards barefoot. This is a process, and and you have to start with the environment, what they eat, everything. And so she's now teaching people that.
It's crazy.
So-
It's true. A simple thing like horseshoes. I mean,
Yeah.
horses in the wild don't have horseshoes. So
That's it. But you can't just take them off, and so you have to go through composites and stuff. But it's just, she represents what so many people come to me, and creative people and holistic practitioners, with the variety of different things, and they get down on themselves because they're like, oh, I've just got too many things. But that's what the world needs more than anything right now, is people that can combine different attributes. Like you were talking to Joanna earlier, and she's the same. She's got the mediumship, she's got the love of nature, and is really talented in working with her hands in the earth. And she's transformed my property. So it's combining these things that we
What an
wouldn't have
amazing
thought
mix,
before.
yeah.
But those are the people that are really. A lot of them are the change leaders, but they're often feeling like, where do I go? I don't know how to do this,
Right, because you don't fit in a very strict mold,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. There's another example too, which is very different, but similar to what I see as well, is someone who had been working had her own business for a long time. She was a journalist and a writer. She wrote for people for a long time. And often we do for people until we get to a certain age, when we start to now get to a point where we can teach. I was doing marketing for many years, and then I started to teach business and strategy. So she was at that point, but she was like, I don't want to teach at university. I couldn't see it. And I kept saying, I really see you as a teacher. I think and she was like, no. And I also needed a writing teacher, so it kind of served me at the same time, right?
Okay.
She goes, well, how do I get in line with my teaching and my writing? I'm writing for magazines, I'm writing for businesses, that type of thing. And she said, I'm also a writer, I want to get my books published and stuff like that. So how do you find something that bridges all of them and makes sense, so you can go out and develop a website and do those kind of things? And so her story was about how to, or what she was offering is how to get people's stories across. So if you're wanting to write your memoir, and that's important to you, but it's also important to people who will read it, if she can help you by teaching you. Or, she's telling stories through her own writing, getting other people's stories across. So it was that one thing that we saw that was in common, helping her to bridge, to create a brand and meld these different aspects of her. But she'd had her own business for 30 years. It was just time for her to get to that next level, Yeah.
Okay.
So those are kind of different examples of people who've moved forward.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I was on your website, and there's a great video on the homepage. I think it was on the homepage about that describes your blueprint for how do you work with clients and your approach. So can you just sort of give us a quick overview of
Sure.
what are those elements?
Sure. Yeah, and everything I do, whether it be a workshop, a retreat, online program, there are really 5 elements that I touch on. And so the first is what we talked about a little earlier, which is starting with your why, understanding what your purpose is,
Right.
what your passion is, and how that combines with your expertise. The second one is then charting a path. Because it's one thing to know what you want to do and your why, but how do you get there? So really creating a practical path. And then the third thing is self-mastery. So it's around some of the things like awareness, cultivating courage, compassion, those elements that help us to become better leaders in our own life, and then better leaders with our clients and our community. And the fourth one is practice, is making sure we're doing something on a regular basis to constantly evolve and grow, like meditation, mindfulness, whatever. And the last piece is community. It's, we cannot do the work that we're meant to do. Like I say, it takes a village to change the world, and so if one person is trying to change their world or the world around them, it's hard to do it alone.
Yes.
So it's really important to have that community.
Okay, and what does that look like usually? I'm sure there are different forms, that the community comes together in different ways and forms.
It's unlimited, really, and I think you start with what resonates with you. A lot of times people say, well, they've even said to me before, I'll take your community. You've already got a community, go on.
Right.
But it's really about defining that community that's really unique to you. And it's around your passion, your purpose, your why, those other principles first. So when I was on my path and I went over to Bali to try to figure out what I wanted to do, I realized that my community was back here of like-minded people who like to connect with nature, who also were really interested in doing work that they loved. So I came back here and I said, well, how do we meet on a regular basis? So I just had informal meetings for a while, and then that started to grow, and there was like 9 women that said, well, maybe we could do more. How could we serve the community? So we created a festival called the Awakening Festival, and then that turned into a monthly gathering called the Awakening Cafe, and then that grew into like an online presence, which is now the Awakening Village.
Right.
And so it was always in that reciprocal me serving, and not necessarily always knowing where it was going to go, but then in doing that, it always served me back in terms of people that would support me on my path, offer advice, services, also potential clients, so they knew me. It's really hard to go and market and advertise out there, but if you've got a community that you've developed, and then you talk about the work you love, it's really easy to engage people and get them interested in your work.
What a great idea.
Yeah, so I think it's important everybody, even every practitioner has their own defined community. Not just latch onto somebody else. That's part of your community, but you have your own.
We're not
One
just
tribe.
going to a networking meeting where, like, I've had that experience where you go and everyone has 30 seconds to talk, and it's big and overwhelming, but it sounds like what you're talking about is really these little subgroups, or it could be within a larger community, but people who can really be there to, like you were saying, support, refer, say the right thing at the right time, or...
What's cool about it is you meet other people that can lead you down different paths that you may have not imagined by yourself. So there's this constant, influence, one person influencing the other.
It's like a really deeper soul networking, and it's exactly what you're doing with a holistic health network, or holistic life network. It's really very much about connecting with like-minded people, serving it. And networking is great, but somebody owns that community, so to speak.
Right.
And I don't mean own in that traditional way, but the person leading that's their community. So you pop in, you cross-pollinate communities, but it's not your own. And so it's whatever is really unique for you. So you're doing a lot of work online, interviewing people. Other people like to do networking events. Other people like to write and connect with their community that way. It depends on again, it comes back to your passion and purpose. What do you love to do that's natural? Because there'll be a lot of people who, for example, wouldn't be comfortable in front of a camera and can't create community like that, and they'll say, well, I can't do that. But there's something that they can do, that they can find a way to connect with people.
Even myself, the last thing I wanted to do was be in front of a camera, but my desire was bigger than what my ego was telling
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
or my lack of self-worth. So
Yeah.
I did it anyway.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's an experiment
Yeah.
for me too, you know.
Well, and that goes back to one of those principles of mastery is, is the cultivating courage.
Right.
And when we do things outside of our comfort zone. And I think that one of the new normals is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think it's really important. Again, as we age, it becomes even more important because we start to limit our lives. And because of fear, we don't do things because we're
Yes.
uncomfortable, whatever. But if we get into a pattern of always trying something that we're not comfortable with, it leads us to amazing things, and then we get
Absolutely.
comfortable with them,
Interesting.
right?
I was going to ask you about that actually, because I was really interested in the self-mastery and in the practice elements. And I
Yeah.
was
So those
wondering,
are two together, right?
how do they come up? So how do you practice that in on this coaching journey? Or so you just gave a really good example of if someone needs to cultivate, I guess, confidence in themselves
Yes.
and courage,
Yes.
then simply developing a practice of trying something new or putting
Yes.
ourselves in new situations is going to help
Exactly.
us cultivate that.
Perfect. You made a good connection, exactly. And the way I do it actually in some of the work that I do, let's say I was doing a program, we'll have a lesson around that about cultivating courage. That might be one lesson in amongst 40. And then we'll have exercises around that, and I'll have people do practices and report back to the community. That's the other thing. In any of the work I do, it's always developing community. Even if it's a one-day workshop like you went to recently, my first intention is how do I create community and connect the people that are there? Because 3/4 of the magic is in those connections.
So true.
People see the fear that other people they're experiencing in
Yes.
others, the challenges, the hopes and dreams, and so that's where so much magic is. And then it's just a bit of lessons and guidance.
And sometimes the connection may not have any fruition right away, but a
Yeah.
year down the road, that
Yeah.
one connection can lead to so many little miracles, you know.
It's so true, and just like that seed. And
Yeah, it just
and
gets
knowing
planted.
that,
Later on, you
Yeah.
come back and look at it. And
yeah.
Well, it was here at Lianne's event, the one-day retreat with Sharon Cohen, that you and I had this conversation about
Yes.
this project that you're doing, and so it created this opportunity for us to even have an exchange about it, and for me to find out about it and say, wow, that sounds amazing, and I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
So, but those conversations don't happen unless there are.
Bring people
Yeah.
together, and you can do it
Gatherings or-
online too, and you can do it through these kinds of conversations.
That's
There's so many
right.
ways to do it.
Hmm.